So Andy, when I was getting ready to interview you about this new solo album you have coming out, 10 Crowns, I realized it was made in a milestone year for you. So happy belated
Oh,
birthday.
thank you, huh? That
You
was,
hit,
yeah, 60 last year, and it's coming up. Oh no, it's April already, isn't it?
it
So
is.
anyway, so I'll be 61 now. Yeah, but I didn't think of it. I mean, it is kind of a milestone, but I didn't think of it like that, and it just so happened that the previous solo album was 20 years ago. So it's not like being Adele, but it just happened like that. Yeah. So, but it was a fantastic celebration, and my partner, he organised the whole thing. We're at the moment we're in Mallorca, which is our downtime place, and he invited all our friends over, got a hotel, got a shuttle bus, did everything, and it was incredible. We had a lovely time.
I would expect that you would know how to have a good party. I would expect nothing less
Well,
from you, especially with a dancey
yeah,
album like this.
yeah, we do, hun. And it was kind of the album just happened coincidentally at the same time because it was recorded over a 12-year period, like
Oh,
not as an album, but I've been writing with Dave or Day off and on, and we do have, there's another song called Off and On, isn't on the album, but um, yeah, we started like in LA in maybe 12 or 13 years ago.
oh,
And the song Don't You Know was one of the first songs that we wrote together before we've had three songs on his own label, which were in the dance charts and on Billboard. But Don't You Know, yeah, it was one of these songs where he played me the music and I picked up the mic and it was like this live mic. It was a Shure mic with a lead, those really rough ones, you could just beat them around. So we had that, and then I'd written these rough lyrics and sang through it twice, and that's the vocal that we used for the song now that's on the album. So it's kind of people say, "Oh, you sound so fresh," and I'm like, "Well, it should be." It was a while ago. So, but anyway, hopefully the other vocals match as well, to that freshness. Yeah.
So this is interesting because obviously you're known for a very long-running partnership with Vince Clarke. You're known
Yeah.
for
Yeah.
obviously Erasure, and it's,
Yeah.
Erasure was kind of the band that stuck for Vince. The bands he had before,
Yeah.
Depeche Mode and Yazoo were like much shorter lived, and then like Erasure's
Yeah.
like 3 decades on. So you're used to working with him because you
Yeah.
actually weren't famous until Erasure. Erasure was your break.
That's true.
So
Yeah.
so working with Dave, and now it's been a while, but like that must be an interesting adjustment for you to work with someone else like that.
It is, yeah. I mean, it's kind of the same when when we're working with Erasure. I mean, I love Vince. I was like enamored with Vince. I mean, you probably know, but like, before I met him, I was a fan of his, and I thought like, oh, who's the most coolest person I could work with in pop? Honestly, and I thought, well, maybe I should write Vince a letter. When he was doing the Assembly project, I thought, oh, I'll write Vince a letter, see if he needs a new singer. And then the same time, I was in this band called Dinger, and we were a duo, and we didn't get it anywhere, but we had a producer, Steve, no, what's his name? Pete Gage from a band called Vinegar Joe with Elkie Brooks. So he did the producing for this project called Dinger, and we sent it to all the record labels. Didn't get any positive feedback, and then Vince was one of the first people that I saw when I went to an audition for a Bow Wow Wow spin-off band,
Oh wait,
and
I don't know about this. Bow Wow Wow.
yeah,
Was
yeah.
Malcolm McLaren involved?
Maybe I don't know who the people were, but I thought Bow Wow Wow, that's really cool. So
Because Bow
went
Wow
to
Wow were a
the
spin-off of Adam and the Ants. So it's like,
Yes, kind of, yeah. So, and I loved
huh.
Annabella Lewin, and I loved the Bow Wow Wow sound. So they
Mhm.
had the same drums as Adam, and yeah. So I went along, and it was at Vince's studio, which he half owned with Eric Radcliffe Yaz, who produced Yaz. So I went in there, and it was like, oh my god, that's Vince Clarke, and he was on a Space Invaders machine, like doing that with this big long fringe hanging down. And but he had been in my subconscious already, so
Yeah.
I saw him, and then I thought, well, maybe I should write him a letter. And then I was living in this cooperative, a gay cooperative, and that one of the guys in the house said to me, because I used to rehearse to like Alison Moyet records, Yaz, and he said to me, "That's going to be you in a year's time." This guy in the house, and then after I thought I should write him a letter, I looked in the NME or the Melody Maker, and there was this TV advert saying, "Established songwriter seeks versatile singer." So I thought, oh, I'll just ring it up and see what happens. And then they said, we're full, the auditions are done. If we don't find anyone, we'll call you back. I thought, oh, that's it. They won't call. So, and then they did call the next day. Said, can you come today? So I said, yes. And they said, it's for Vince Clarke. Do you know who that is? And I was like, do I know who that is? Do I know who that is? And I went screaming around the house, running up and down the stairs. And I thought, well, I'm going to go and have this audition with Vince Clarke, and I'm just going to have a fantastic day and just really enjoy it. And I went with an orange and brown umbrella. And I don't know if he knew, I was gay or whatever, I don't know. But I can't believe my bravado, because when I hear my voice now, those audition tapes now, to me, it was kind of quite weak. But
Oh,
for some reason, when I sang Who Needs Love Like That, which was one of the demo songs, falsetto just sprang out. I'd never done it before.
wow.
And it just sprang out. And I thought, where did that come from? And then they had one more person after me. And then they phoned me the next day and they said, do you want the job? And I said, yes, please. And
Do you,
yeah, and they said like, well, at the moment, Vince is finishing off this assembly project. He's got a single with Paul Quinn coming out from Bougie Bougie, but we'll keep you on a retainer for £150 a week, which then was a lot of money. And so I went to Ibiza for the first time in my life,
there you go. But
you
then
know,
like I said, you're obviously always going to be known for being one half of Erasure because they're super
yeah,
iconic. But the partnership you have with Dave is also lasting. So, like, I guess what I'm saying is you kind of like, you're kind of a serial monogamous when it comes to the
yes,
producers. You
that
find
is
someone
true.
you like and you stick with them.
That is true, hun. I think that's like a Taurian trait. You find someone, and if you trust them, or they learn to trust you, and it's kind of like with Vince, it's because he's Cancerian, and I know he's very guarded, and
Mm.
he's been famous since he was 17, and he doesn't like the machismo of rock and roll and stuff like that. So I think I was kind of the ideal person, and I was very very shy as well in the first place. It was we were in the studio for 6 months, and I wouldn't say a word. I would just be in the studio staring at Vince. He probably thought I was crazy because I could not believe I was in the same studio with him. And they were like doing all these things. It was with Flood, the producer, to like get me to relax. And like when we were doing the Ola Moore, they had me like laying on the floor on my back to like trying to get my breathing right, for the beginning of the song and all kinds of things, and telling me jokes. And honestly, they did everything they could to make me relax. But it took us being on the road together. And then when we did our first true co-write, which was Sometimes the song from the second album, then I felt like um, my my guard dropped down, I suppose, because I had this sort of starry-eyed
Mm-hmm.
fan thing, fan thing going on. And
Mm-hmm.
I think when you're a fan, you never ever forget it.
No,
You
I'm
don't.
still a fan. I mean, I think it's cool that
Yeah,
you can still talk about this experience, 35,
yeah,
almost 40 years later, and still kind of talk about it with that sort of starry-eyed
Yeah,
quality. It's very cute, for
it's
lack of a better
lovely.
word.
I love it. I love it because there's an innocence about it, you know, and it's like you don't. I mean, you know, we you go through your ups and downs in the industry and stuff, and like we've written like 19 albums together, and of course you're going to have troughs and peaks, you know. And you know, sometimes you're a bit jaded, sometimes you're a bit cynical, but I think still to have those innocent eyes, or I love it. I'm
Yeah, I
such
love
a
it too. I love hearing you talk about it.
I'm such a pop fan. You know, it's just it's and I love being born in the '60s and having the history of rock and roll from my parents' records. So it feels like an education, but it's
Hmm.
kind of it's a self education. You know, because you didn't learn it in school. It's
Or the
from
internet.
no, it's just from like listening to records, and therefore that's where my love of girl groups comes from, and the sound like of the Ronettes, and you can hear that's where
Mhm.
Blondie came from, punk came from, you know. So it's and it all it's like this tree that sort of I don't know, it's a family tree.
Well, you mentioned Blondie, and I know Debbie Harry is on this record on one of my favorite tracks. Well, I do love the song "Heart's a Liar" that you did with Debbie on this new record on 10 Crowns, because I know you being the pop fan that you're talking about, that was another thing where you were probably like fanning out and like this.
Honestly, yeah, she you know, she's my beauty, and it's kind of like I did. You know, I didn't fall in love, but I had a crush on this boy when Denise came out. You know, and at the same time I heard the record, I had this crush, and I was like, oh, who is this lady singing? And then once I saw her, I was like, wow, you know, with the halo, the backlit halo with the hair, and I went and bought my first packet of bleach and bleached my hair in school uh, because of Debbie, and then wore the Debbie T-shirt, you know. And it was like she gave me the confidence to be who I was as a teenager. And then when Dreaming came out, you know, I would just rush on the dance floor and do that wailing arm circular dance that she did, you know. So a lot of my idiosyncrasies on stage come from her,
Wow. Does she
you
know
know.
that? Did you tell her all that?
I don't know. Maybe she recognizes some of them. I don't know.
But
But
did you tell her
also,
the Bleach story?
I haven't told her the bleach story, no. But also, I have borrowed a few lines from some of their songs. So,
Oh, really? Like which ones?
like To the Orange Side,
Mm.
which is on Blue Savannah, which is in Union City Blue. And oh, what's the other one? I can't think now
Worse.
where from. But I think it's nice to have these, you know, um, pieces of other people, because it's like a little bit of a puzzle, and you just take it and it fits into your song, you know.
I did want to ask you, you were saying a little bit a while ago, you were talking about when you first auditioned for Vince, which started
Yeah,
this whole career for you. You said
yeah,
at the time you weren't sure if he knew you were gay or not. Obviously, it wouldn't be
yeah,
something that would bother him if he did know. But, you know,
yeah,
the 80s were an interesting time because
yeah,
obviously there was a lot of things about the 80s that were very conservative. But
yeah,
then there were a lot of like, obviously Boy
mm,
George was really big. Bronski Beat
yep,
was blowing up. Frankie Goes to Hollywood were like the biggest band
yes,
in the world for a minute. And,
sure.
and I think I've actually maybe showed you this before, but like there's this book, 50 Queer Music Icons That
Oh,
Changed the World.
fabulous.
Boy
Yeah.
George is in it, but here on page, I believe I bookmarked it, page 38.
Wow.
I'll
Yeah.
find you, but you're in the book.
Yeah.
So,
Oh,
oh, here we are. So
that's
basically,
nice.
it was a
Yeah.
time. Here we go. They made a little drawing of
Oh,
you.
my little red
Yeah.
hair. That was my strawberry. That's my real color.
Is it
Strawberry.
really? I do like the
Yeah.
blonde on you, but it was the Debbie inspired blonde. But yeah, it was an interesting time where, in some ways, things were very conservative, but in some
Yeah.
ways, it felt like uh, gay culture in
Yeah.
the mainstream in pop
Yeah.
music, at least,
Yeah.
was
It was
being
great.
celebrated in a way like never
Yeah.
before.
It was
And you,
great. You know, I kind of feel like, not that we had to do it, but there was such a wave that you kind of like either you surfed the wave or you ignored the wave, and then but it's kind of it's what's weird about it is like which kind of taught me a huge lesson about the music industry is like by being honest and having your heart on the sleeve, you took the hard road, you took the difficult route, but in some ways it kind of gives you just this insight and this knowledge of how things operate in the world, and how you're not going to be first on the list because at that time, it was like uh, frowned upon or whatever. But yes, it kind of set like a foundation, I suppose. And I did not like lying. I don't like lying. I was kind of if somebody asked me a question, I'd always tell them the truth because I can't lie because it's not in my nature. I just wanted to say, well, what it is. I don't have a girlfriend. I have a boyfriend. That's it. And so,
Well, I'm curious because obviously this is relevant to, stuff you've talked about that you've talked very
yeah,
openly about, but I have a theory. I didn't make up this
yeah,
theory. I've just heard this theory.
yeah,
Like
yeah,
it seems like things were going in the 80s in a very positive direction when it came to
yes,
LGBTQ plus culture and
yeah,
mainstream pop.
yeah,
And then AIDS happened.
yep,
And it seemed like that pushed everything back. Everything
yeah,
regressed after that because people were
yeah,
scared. And
yep.
obviously, you've been living with HIV for, I think, since
A long
98,
time. Yeah,
at a
long
time
time.
when, back then everyone
Yeah.
thought HIV
Uh-oh.
was a death
Yeah.
sentence. Well, it
Yeah.
was,
It was.
sadly, it was.
It was.
Um,
Yeah.
so, yeah, I'm wondering about your thoughts about that, about how kind of the pendulum
Uh,
swung the other way.
yes. I mean, it was very scary. It's kind of like we did gay pride marches. I went on marches. We did gay pride performances, in the early days, and we had some fantastic times. We played on the South Bank in London. We had, Sinead O'Connor was there. She said, "Andy, would you look after my little Jack for me while I go around and look at all on the stalls and things there?" And this was before it was um, became corporate, And then there was Banana Rama, Lily Savage, and then Divine coming down the Thames on top of a barge singing "If You Think You're a Man." So
Oh
it
my
was just this,
God.
it was this just like euphoria, this euphoria. And then also you kind of felt a duty because when I started going to gay clubs, it was kind of like the clone thing, the clone look was kind of just going out of fashion, and high energy was just going out of fashion. And that's why I feel in some ways on our first album, Wonderland, I didn't force it upon Vince, but I said, "Oh, let's try this high energy music," but it was just on its way out. So I think it wasn't very friendly, or the radio wasn't very friendly towards it. But I felt like we kind of had a duty towards the clones. That sounds bad, but because they were dying, they were dying, and I thought, well, we've got to keep the flame alive. And then there was Sylvester, bless him, and all these other people. And to me, I've always had this total admiration for these as well straight disco divas that were going out doing live performance PAs in gay clubs, which is one of the toughest jobs on the planet. I can understand why Grace Jones insists that she's paid up front before she goes on the stage.
She earns
So
every penny, by the way.
yeah, so
She's the
so
best.
I just felt like it was kind of a duty, really. And Jimmy Somerville was at the forefront for me. He was a foot soldier, and I felt like I was kind of in the background because I mean we were vocal but not as political. But I kind of felt like to appeal to the ordinary man or woman, you just made it like normal conversation kind of thing, you know. So therefore, I would never go in the front in marches, which seems a bit cowardly, but I didn't want to be arrested, you know. But we did the die-ins and all those kind of things for Stonewall, you know. And at the same time, it was really scary. It was very scary, you know. And even performing in the US at that time, you know, like because you just didn't know what was going to happen anytime, you know. And sometimes I was grateful that we weren't played on the radio because I didn't want my profile to be that high that
Mm.
everybody knew all at once. So maybe I was slightly closeted in my being out,
Hmm. Is this
you
something
know?
you ever discussed with either Vince or with your manage or what, your record label, or this was there any sort of
No, I
discussion
mean,
about how to
Vince.
present, how much didn't say or not say
Well,
or anything like that?
that's interesting because Vince knew because I was inviting lots of boys to the studio because I was kind of showing off to them. And you know, I was very shy, like going to gay clubs. I thought, oh my God, these people, they're so good looking, all these other people, you know. It's that typical teenage angst.
Hmm.
And you know, and so in some ways becoming well known or becoming more known was like an introduction for me to the scene, and because you become a diplomat and people come to you, approach you rather than the other way round. And to be honest, I've never been chatted up, like probably only once in my life. I've always had to do the chasing, if you want.
I'm very surprised by that.
Yeah, I know, which is kind of like I wouldn't consider myself alpha, but that's sort of an alpha thing to do. But
Yeah.
because out of necessity, you know. So yeah, Vince knew with all the people, but I thought, well, of all the people, he was so cool. He thought it was really cool, you know. And then with the record company, unfortunately, you know, we did drag on our first video. I wanted to be Judy Garland on our second video, you know, and it was a bit kind of, this was so pre RuPaul's Drag Race. And in the UK, we have a different kind of drag. It's much more comedic, and we call it end of the pier seaside humor. So it wasn't serious trying to look like a woman or anything,
Like
you know.
Dame Edna type of.
Yeah, you know, it was campy and base humor. So that kind of missed with the audience, you know. So therefore, on sometimes the video, it was jeans and t-shirt, James Dean. Do you know what I mean?
I did like the ABBA drag that you did years later.
Yeah, yeah, that worked out really well. I don't think they were too happy about it, the men in the band, but they're cool. They're cool now, you know.
Well, I'm happy, like I said, you're in this 50 queer music icons that changed the world. You
Oh,
made the 50 along with people like Joe Bryant and
yes, yeah,
Boy George and
fantastic.
Katie Lang and Holly
Yeah,
Johnson and the Pet Shop
yep,
Boys, and the list goes on.
right.
Um, and I don't always know if you get your flowers in that regard, because Erasure, as you mentioned, maybe kind of seemed more
Yeah,
lighthearted, less
yeah,
political, less serious,
sure.
whatever. So,
Yeah,
I don't even know if that
I
matters to you. Getting
yeah. I mean, that's to me, it's always been fun. It's like I never care about how you're perceived, or you know, it kind of like, of course it hurts like anything else, you know. Like, therefore Vince has always told me you shouldn't read your reviews, which I always do. But you know, but that's the whole thing as well about rock and roll, or you know, inverted commas. It was always taken so seriously. Everything was taken so seriously, and I suppose in some ways my look wasn't refined. You know, you sort of have to have this. I don't know. I mean, now everything is completely designer anyway. In those days, it wasn't. You made your own look. You created your own look. And you know, and I loved Boy George. I loved Mark Harmond. You know, and they were kind of like androgynous,
Mark's
and
in the book.
you didn't know. You know, you
Yeah.
kind of didn't know, but you assumed. You know, so for me, it was like I just wanted people to know, and it was like I wanted them to have no doubt whatsoever. So I kind of my persona, my bravado, this armor was to be the campest queen possible, and which I am quite camp in my real life, I suppose, but I just made it more over the top. And maybe maybe it was a cliche, but and therefore I wasn't taken seriously in the pop fraternity,
Huh.
which is, it's kind of easy to see, but I think they missed a point. They missed the point, you know.
What was the point that they missed, would you say?
Well, I think because it was kind of far ahead. It was far ahead because that's what Harry Styles does now, and and even David Bowie was, we supported him twice, and he was always on the side of the stage watching, and it's and
Wow.
again, I know I wasn't refined as him, but I was a raw working class boy with no clue about fashion, so that was
That's
it basically. Yeah.
that's I
And
mean,
I learned all my when I first moved to London, my touchstone was going to drag shows.
oh wow.
So, and dealing with hecklers in the audience and stuff. So
Have you
that's what
been on RuPaul's Drag Race UK
I
yet?
haven't. No, we were asked finally to appear this September, but we're on the road, so I can't we can't do it, unfortunately.
I saw
But
Simon Le Bon do it. I mean, a peer of
yeah,
yours of the era. But yeah, that app there needs to
yeah.
be an erasure like challenge.
Yeah, I mean, I can't, as well. I don't want to be horrible to the drag queens either. Maybe I'm
Yeah,
too soft. Yeah,
I I understand. But that would be absolutely amazing. So
oh,
I when I was talking about you being a pioneer and just being outspoken
yeah,
and stuff, I did mention that you have been living, thriving with
yeah,
HIV for a long
yep,
time, and I
yeah,
don't think kids today, young people did, thankfully
yeah,
for them, I'm talking about like, millennials and Gen
yeah.
Z, they don't remember or they don't know
No,
what that would, they've never lived with how serious it was. I don't think the gravity of how horrible
what it
that time
was.
in
I mean, it was.
history was.
Yeah, I mean, it was. You talk about COVID. I'm not comparing, but it was like at least 500,000 people that died.
Mm.
And it wasn't until Elizabeth Taylor threatened Ronald Reagan to expose him for past dalliances, let's
Ooh,
say.
really?
Yes,
This I don't know. I don't know about this.
then he came on board with providing assistance and medicine for gay men, and that's what we're battling against now still, and the funding is being cut.
Mm.
I know it's abroad and it seems like a long way away, but still it can happen to anyone, and we can't take it for granted that you're going to have access to these medicines, and neither can I. It's
Yeah.
precarious.
Is that happening in the UK as well? Are you
Well,
talking specifically about the US?
it depends who controls the pharmaceutical industry and how the health service works. So, you know,
Okay. Yeah,
who
it's
knows?
very it's also
Who
it's
knows?
scary, but I also would love your opinion on,
Yeah,
because of the fact that young people,
yeah,
there's PrEP and there's all sorts of
yeah,
medications that very sadly the first generation that had to deal with the
yeah,
risk of AIDS didn't have access to.
yeah,
Well, those meds didn't exist. I
yeah,
don't know if, because they don't know the gravity of the situation, I don't
yeah,
know if they're being like, I feel like they still kind of need to be educated about safe
yeah.
sex and
Yes.
all
I mean,
that.
the only thing is, it could easily be taken away just with with a signature on a piece of paper. Somebody signed a piece of paper and they put, no, this drug's no longer accessible to this group of people. Then you're going to have you will have to protect yourself with condoms and how we did in the old-fashioned way. And sex education is very important, even though it's being curtailed in lots of places.
Absolutely. Is there
Yeah.
anything on the new album, 10 Crowns? I wouldn't say it's a political record, but there's some
Yeah.
social commentary on the record. I'd like a song like Dawn of Heaven's Gate or Put Your Empathy on Ice, if I'm listening
Yeah.
to them correctly. Are you commenting
Yeah.
on anything? I know you've lived
Uh,
in Florida, you split your time between
yeah.
the UK and Europe
I
and
do. I
America,
do.
so
Yeah, I do, honey. I kind of make it like because because we learn how to read between the lines. I think we also have to write between the lines. So you kind of like you take tentative footsteps, and I'm not saying that you make things totally obvious and put it in their face, but you could put like you can have a subliminal message or something that people that are reading it will like hopefully understand where you're coming from and um, what you're talking about, and especially like on something like Godspell, which is you know really I said we had a meeting with Sony and I said oh that would work really well on Buffy the Vampire Slayer or something, so really it's just about this having your circle of friends, people that you love and that you trust and that are going to take care of you no matter what, and I understand how any parent can throw out their own child, their own creation onto the street because they don't adhere to your principles or what you've been taught, and it makes me very upset, and so and sometimes I don't know. You kind of feel like, I mean, because I was brought up I went to a cathedral school. We sang hymns. I love singing hymns. I love being in the church. I don't necessarily understand the Bible, but I just think, how can you disclude anyone? It's
I
not about
agree.
disclosing people, and it was, I just said in another interview, at the end of a prayer, you always say Amen. And Amen means unto all the people, it means unto everybody. So if you're not saying unto everybody, you can't say Amen at the end of a prayer. Yeah, I mean, to me, it's kind of like any religion. I mean, the basis to me should be about spirituality, lifting people up, helping people, helping your neighbor, helping the poorest people, not demonizing people for being homeless or for being from another country. It's just inclusion. That's it.
It's a great message. There's another question. The last track on the album is definitely one I wanted to ask about. It's called "Thank You" because you described it in your press release as a euphoric funeral song.
Oh,
And I
yeah.
sort of started this interview by talking about you hitting the big 6-0, and
Right.
you've like I said, you've survived and thrived with HIV, and you've had other loss in your
Mm.
life. You've had health scares in your life. So like
Yep.
I'm just wondering if what was bringing on this sort of like euphoric funeral song that made you want to do a song like that.
Um, to me, it was kind of like, I don't know why, but it was kind of the end of the show, for the album. It was like, um, it was either the last song or the second last song written. And to me, it was just like a closing curtain. It's like a closing curtain, maybe on an episode. I'm not sure, but and a part of evolving or kind of becoming a swan or whatever, and it's a genuine thank you to the people, and I kind of like felt like the best feeling in the world is when you're walking onto the stage and you're just on your own, you're bare, there's one spotlight shining on you, and you have the audience there, and you bare your soul to them, and you say, "Thank you, everybody." Even if it's one person, thank you, everybody, because I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for all you people. I wouldn't be here because that love. It sounds so corny, but that that love has enabled me to be here. I think every human goes through periods of they might give up. I think they do. I think you do. I think it's part of human nature. And it's like an animal, if you're wounded, you're gonna you isolate, you lick your wounds, hopefully you've got other people there that are gonna look after you or get you some food or whatever, just make you feel needed and wanted, and that will help you through your diagnosis or get you better. And really it's up to you in the end, because it's kind of in your mind. I know we can all be defeated by disease, but I do believe in self-healing, and I do believe in prayer. That's it's very powerful, and it's very, if you have the will of lots of people together plus medicine, you can survive.
I know I've read that you and Vince have started working on another Erasure record. Is that true? Is there
Yeah,
anything you can
that's
tell
true.
me
Yeah,
about that?
it is true. We've visited each other. I've had some songs sent by Vince to me, and then we've got together and we started writing. We haven't finished. We're meeting again in August, so we want to get it right. We want it to get we want the right feeling, and we'll know. So many things have happened in between, and for Vince especially, so uh, we are a family. We are a family, and I'm going to call him tonight after this, because I want him to know that that we're here. I'm here. It's he's not the most easiest person to get through to, but we've had some really lovely conversations since, so yeah, I love him.
Oh, well, I hope he's doing well. You can tell him I say hello, and that all of his fans say hello as well when you give
All
him a
right,
call.
honey, thank you.
Yeah, I just guess the last question I'll ask is, do you feel like I'm sorry, I was about to say a really dumb, I'll say it anyway.
Yeah.
You have a song called A Little Respect.
Oh yeah.
I think
Yeah.
you deserve a lot of respect. You've sort of touched on the fact that maybe you or Erasure didn't get it because of the camp or pop element, but I kind of
Yeah.
feel like that's you have that now.
Yeah, that's my own unself-confident undercurrent, so that's dispelling itself right now. And at the same time, I don't want to be some arrogant person with my nose stuck up in the air. You've got to sort of instill it wisely, or like Annie Lennox. I love her, and like Kate Bush, and just have a certain amount of humility, but at the same time, know where you stand, you know.
Now, I know where you stand. You're one of the 50 queer music icons that changed the world. So thank you again. I've kept you a long time, and I know it's late over there, but congratulations on the release of 10 Crowns, and I'm looking forward to what you do next, solo and with Vince.
Thank you, honey, so much. Thank you.